everyone, and welcome back to the Pop Shock podcast, the number one podcast that features Scottish and Irish people, because that's what we're claiming to on iTunes charts.
That covers pop culture.
No, listen. It covers pop culture with Scottish and Irish people.
Yeah.
That's what we should do. But anyway, I am Massimo. I'm back. Had a hiatus for a little bit, but now I'm appearing on these bonus episodes of the podcast now and again. And as always, I am joined by Dan the man. How are we doing, Dan?
Bonus boy.
Bonus boy.
I'm good, man. I mean, I'm okay. I'm a bit tired, but I'm here and I'm going to talk a lot of nonsense about video games, which is what I like to do. So
exactly. Well, with that being said, this episode's feature topic is PopShock picks our games of the years.
Mass, you came up with that title so quickly, man. It was so natural and just give that one a job.
So to basically to give you a summary of what we're doing here, we are going to be going back through the Game of the Year awards and going through each individual year and having a look at the winners of those years and then what our picks for those years for the Game of the Year would have been. Basically, we're trying to tell the industry people that they're all wrong and we're right and why we're right, etc., etc. And that's it. And if you have your own opinions,
every week.
exactly. Especially last week, Ant-Man. With that being said, if you have your own opinions about games of the years or what a game that you feel it was snuffed at the last minute for these awards, leave them in the comments below. But with that being said, we should probably get on to our first PopShock picks game of the years.
Mass, you're such a better host than me, man. I always forget to do the audience engagement thing at the top. I'm always like 2 hours in and I'm like the video. I like that early engagement. That's nice.
That's it. We'll try to get the clicks in early, but yes, so we'll start with 2014 and Dan.
We're going for 2014 because that's when the Game Awards officially started, and This episode can be in honour of our Lord and Saviour Jeff Keighley, who does the Game Awards. I don't know if he's on the panel. I don't know if he has a say in what the game is, but he's a host. Yeah, so 2014. So we're just going to read the game out, I take it, and then just go through whether we agree with it or not, and whether we what we think of said game. Yeah. Right. So for starting with 2014, then we're looking at Dragon Age Inquisition. I'm not going to lie, Mass. I never owned this game. I played a bit of it in one of my college pals' dorm rooms. That's my experience with this game. What about yourself?
So for myself, and again, this is one of those things. Didn't play it. However, I have friends who speak highly of it, who I've seen a lot of video content about it, and also I like my BioWare stuff, I like the other games that they've produced over the years. So for this one, I feel like it might be a bit unfair of what we're going with, but we will be going with games that we know, I guess. But I think the DragonAge is it's a pretty safe pick for that year, considering how big an RPG it was.
I remember at the time, so I played I think this is the third Dragon. I'm pretty sure Inquisition is the third Dragon Age game. I never played the first one, but a lot of my pals did, and they all banged on about it. So I remember getting the second one and thinking it was a mediocre or fantasy RPG. It's fine, but it was like, to me, it was always, this isn't as good as Skyrim. Like, do you know what I mean? It was like the lesser version of what Bethesda were doing at the time, in my opinion. And then, as I said, I played a wee bit of Inquisition when it was out because I just happened to be in a dorm room at the time when it was on. But yeah, 2014, looking back at it, it was a fairly strong year, but quite a lot of games that, like, they were good, but they maybe weren't up there with that. Mass, what were the other nominations for that year? Can you read them?
So the other nominations for 2014 were Bayonetta 2 by Platinum Games, Dark Souls 2 by From Software, Hearthstone, which is an interesting one, by Blizzard Entertainment. And then, of course, which this will be my pick that I think should have won the game of the year for this year, was Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor by Monolith Productions.
Right.
Published by Warner Brothers Interactive.
Out of those nominations, I would 100% agree with you that Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor should have, could have, and yeah, that deserved to earn. But I mean, Hearthstone, it's not my thing, but that was a huge game. Like, I remember that
at the time,
massive, especially for like a card-based game. Like, I remember finding out it was a turn-based card game, and I was like, that's what everybody's talking about, like this shitty basic card game, but people loved it.
It's because it's before the times of, when they had, your like weirdly enough, the big boys were chasing pursuit after Hearthstone. Like the guys who, Wizards of the Coast, who make Magic and the Nintendo stuff, who produce the Pokemon card game, they then started to develop their own digital versions of their games, and I'm pretty sure came after Hearthstone a lot of time. But these kind of monetized versions, because obviously you had other games that kind of Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff like that were just for the PS2 and stuff like that. If you remember those games years and years and years ago, but this was obviously the first big monetized online card game, in my opinion, that I'd heard of anyway.
I also think that, I mean, it depends. I guess it depends on what your like what you decide earns a game the Game of the Year title, but I think I would argue that a part of it should be that it moved the needle. It done something new. It brought something new to the fold. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor's Nemesis system was groundbreaking and hadn't really been done before, and has been attempted since and never done as well as what it was in those Lord of the Rings games. And also, testament to that, how good that game is. I hate Lord of the Rings. I hate fantasy, and I love my time with that game. It was hella fun, and I have no interest with that world. So that shows you how how entertaining it was.
Whereas I'm the opposite. I love Lord of the Rings, and I love my fantasy stuff, and I think he did a fantastic job of capturing that world of the Tolkien's world, that big expansive fantasy thing. Tolkien purists will hate it because it doesn't actually fit anywhere within the timeline, and it is a non-canon story. However, I still think it probably would take the top spot for me because of stuff like the Nemesis system, how fun and engaging the gameplay was, just the combat was just so good, the story was great, and to make a really bland and dry landscape that is Mordor really fun and entertaining and expansive, that was a great thing as well.
And
it was
fun to traverse. It was fun to do parkour and stuff. And by that point, Assassin's Creed had been out for years, and we were kind of getting to the point that it was like, oh, it's a bit. But for whatever reason, it was just fun to run about Mordor in that game. Like, it was just
stab orcs and just take the bow and arrow, teleport, stuff like that.
I liked the skill tree as well, unlocking different ways to kill them and stuff. Yeah,
and you could go more towards doing the ranger thing, or you could do more as the elven kind of thing. It's really cool, and in my opinion, probably should have won Game of the Year that year. And I know that people love BioWare, as I said, big fan, love the Mass Effect series. And I know people who love Dragon Age, but that's the thing. I think for me personally, as you said, Dan, Shadowware, I know that Dragon Age definitely did a lot for the RPG genre, but in terms of creating new and interesting ideas, I think that Shadowware really takes it. Shadow of Mordor, even, sorry.
In terms of other games that were released that year that could have been in a shout, I mean, I feel like quite a lot of these, like Far Cry 4 came out in 2014, Far Cry 3 was better. Titanfall came out in 2014, Titanfall 2 was better. There's quite a few examples of like games, but I mean, The Evil Within was incredible. And you've also got South Park: The Stick of Truth, which wasn't my thing again because it was turn-based.
Controversial,
but people loved it. Alien Isolation was pretty great. First proper survival horror alien game. For me, the other one that should have been on that list of nominations is Wolfenstein: The New Order. That Wolfenstein game really reinvented itself, and it was still everything that people loved about Wolfenstein, but done in a way that you just didn't expect. There was actually a good story. There was a relatable character, that had actual good performances and stuff. It was like, this is weird for a Wolfenstein game, but it worked.
Had one of my favourite characters as well. Good old Fergus the Scotsman. Loses his depending on what variation of the because obviously it actually gives you choices that kind of matter as well, which I think a lot of multiple choice story games, which you don't even see that. Yeah, it doesn't really exist. And also an FPS as well was very weird, and it does. And obviously it's, I think, executed a bit better in what's the sequel to that? New Colossus.
Yes, New Colossus. It was.
New Colossus. Yeah,
New Colossus.
Yep. That I think that executed the divergence of choice a little bit better as to tell what happens. But I still think in this game as well, it's fantastic because you have Wyatt and Fergus, and then that's a big whole thing, and that changes how light or how dark the game is in terms of humor and stuff like that. But I think Wolfenstein is definitely up there. Fantasy show.
I had RPG elements to it, which was, as you said, unexpected in the FPS. And it's, to me, it's the best Wolfenstein game. I mean, the sequel was decent. Youngblood was terrible, the sequel to that.
And the Old Blood as well, which is
the Old Blood was great. That was a DLC. When you had New Order, the Old Blood, and New Colossus, that triple threat was the highlight of Wolfenstein as a franchise to me.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Again, Let My Fantasy Show, and out of that year as well was a game the depending on how well versed you are with your kind of fantasy genre is Divinity Original Sin, which assumably we'll get to it eventually. The sequel was a lot better. However, that was a game that was by the guys who did doing the upcoming Baldur's Gate game. I don't know if you've seen a lot of coverage for that. You know, it's been in development for a long time.
Yeah.
They did a fantastic job, and that's another game that kind of reinvented the kind of top-down fantasy genre kind of thing that Diablo was obviously really well known for. And again, that Divinity, the original Divinity, is not as good as the sequel, but but it still is a great game. I feel like it would have been considered for Game of the Year, but a bit of an underground hit.
Speaking of games that aren't the best in the franchise, Infamous Second Son was decent, but to me, the DLC that followed it, that First Light DLC where you played as Fetch with the neon, that was leaps and bounds better than Infamous Second Son. I think that DLC might be the best Infamous game. Second Son was decent. I love First Light. The originals were cool; they were okay, but I feel like First Light, for that franchise, moved the needle. I mean, it's still an open world superhero game. Like, as much as an open world superhero game can move the needle, I feel like First Light, the way that it used its combat, and I remember it being a really fun platinum, which is a rare thing. Usually, a platinum grinds you down. I loved doing the platinum for First Light. Had a lot of fun doing that.
I think as well, a very topical one as well that came out in 2014 that was a DLC. If we're gonna kind of include them, The Last of Us Left Behind. The story-based DLC that featured Ellie and Riley, and as of recently, that episode has just aired of the TV show, which is a very topical one. And again, as the story, Naughty Dog, I think, are fantastic. We're going to come back to it. We'll say what you do about The Last of Us 2, but they do make a fantastic story-based game, and I think Left Behind was the cherry on top of the main Last of Us story that they gave you a little bit of insight into Ellie as a character and kind of made you fall in love with those characters a lot more, in my opinion.
Just before we move on for 2014, Watch Dogs, I'm not going to throw it in the ring for Game of the Year. I would never do that, but I feel like in hindsight, that's an underrated game in my opinion.
I got the collector's edition for that.
I got by far the best. Like the first one,
two's good.
It was okay. It was okay.
It's different.
And also, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes came out in 2014. Who would have thought that the prequel to Metal Gear Solid 5 would be better than Metal Gear Solid 5? But here we are.
Oh, don't piss off because you're my fans, Dan. They'll come for you.
That's to me. That's everything for 2014. That's worth kind of mentioning.
That's absolutely fine. I think with that being said, we'll move on to 2015, which the Game of the Year was. Dan, do you know?
The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
Yes.
So that is a game that I have a very complicated relationship with. I've tried to get into that game 3 times. I can see it's a well-made game. Obviously, I don't think I'm shocking anybody by saying that. But, it's one of the best-rated games of all time. But I just struggle with how overwhelming it was in terms of side quests, in terms of... So I bought the game, didn't get it on release. All the reviews came out, people went mad for it. I kind of seen it at the time as I haven't played the first 2, so I'm not going to play the third one kind of thing. And then I kind of heard later on, you don't need to do that, just pick it up, just buy it. So I bought it in a Steam sale, I remember, 20 quid or something. And I remember getting past the tutorial, getting into the main village, and then opening the map and seeing hundreds of question marks and just being like, nope, life is too short. I don't have the time in my hands. And then it was on a sale on PS4 for £7. I remember it was on sale on PS Plus for £7, and I was like, right, PlayStation, I can chill on my couch, I'll download it. Tried it again, never stuck with it. Something else took my attention away. And then the end of last year, they released the Complete Edition, which has got the new Netflix DLC in it, and it's got everything, all the DLC, the Blood and Wine shit and all that. And I was like, right, this is it. This is the third time lucky. This is my time to get into it. And guess what, Mass? See again, I played a bit of it. It was too vast. It was to be fair, I was reviewing other stuff at the time, so I really had my attention split. And I just mainlined that, because I was doing a DLC article for Fandom Wire. I'll link that below if I remember, about best recent story DLC. And I've just mainlined the DLC. Like, I basically just did a tutorial, got to the point of the story where I was at a high enough level to do the DLC mission, went and did that, got the Netflix armor, and then put it off and deleted it, and that was me forever. So, yeah.
So, I do understand because it's a very big game. It's one of those. It's a very much a sprawling RPG, and it was glitchy. I think that people always forget the fact that it's a very glitchy game.
But yes, it was. I agree. But it's a real comparison. Alongside Skyrim and Fallout 4, which also launched in 2015, The Witcher 3 got a pass because they were doing a similar thing to what Bethesda were doing, but it was less glitchy. So it got a pass.
And in comparison to other CD Projekt Red games, is had a very more well put together one.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, right. I, in my opinion, I think that I caught The Witcher at just the right time. Because I know this we're talking about that, because I'm pretty sure I got it roughly around the same time then. Sure. And I completed the story for that. I love the Witcher story.
Did you play it on PC or PlayStation?
PlayStation 4. That's where I played it on. PlayStation 4. It was a wee bit glitchy. We crashed now and again. You had to restart levels. There was actually a thing as well you had to do on PlayStation, a certain level that involved you fighting a djinn. Where if you hadn't done all the side missions and you didn't really super into the game and stuff like that and other things, that thing would one-shot you. And what it was is that you had to turn off scale by leveling.
Right, okay.
If you did that, it fucked you. Because if you were too high a level, we didn't have all the right gear. So, for example, like me, I blitzed through the story and did some side missions. Did that, and I thought the game was fast. It hit me at the perfect time. I bought it on PC, and I'm since yet to play it. Because I know if I have to play it, it's going to take me hours.
Yeah.
It's going to be hours and hours and hours and hours. I finished it on PlayStation 4. The days. I finished it on PlayStation 4. I never got to play in Blood and Wine. I think that if you're taking just The Witcher by itself, without the Blood and Wine's expansion, which people always say was fantastic as well, it's its own separate game on top of it. It definitely is the game of the year for that year. Mind you, I was still high school at this point, so I'll be honest, my game of the year, and this is purely from a nostalgia point of view, is the multiplayer masterpiece that is Dying Light.
Dying Light. That's another game that I have a interesting relationship with. So, listen, I think you've accused me in the past, and Jared's accused me in the past of just being contrarian for the sake of it. I swear to God, I'm not. Like, I see what I like and I see what I don't like. I'm not trying to be cool or be like different for the crowd or be a hipster, right? I loved Dead Island. Everybody hated Dead Island. I thought Dead Island was great. I loved Dead Island. And then Dying Light came out, and everybody was like, "It's Dead Island with parkour." Like, I love Dead Island. Like, you put parkour in Dead Island, 100. It's Mirror's Edge meets Dead Island, 100%. Sign me up. And I bought the game, and I played half of it, and I don't think I ever finished it. And I thought it was just okay. I didn't think it was a bad game. I just thought it didn't hit me the way that Dead Island did, which I think for a lot of people that's like insane because Dying Light's the one that's considered peak.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
think mine just taken by nostalgia though, because I played a lot of the multiplayer mode with my mates.
Sure.
And we got to play one person as the infective, and the rest of you are just parkour runners and stuff like that. And I have very vivid memories. And I remember playing like through the campaign co-op and stuff like that, and doing drop kicks and getting stupidly good weapons. And I just have like a very fond memories of it. Like, is it the best put together game? No, it's a fantastic game though, in my opinion. That kind of sparks up nostalgia from when I was younger.
It also came out in that perfect dead period. Like, this is kind of changed now to some extent, but I'm sure that was like January this year. Like, you had the Dead Space remake and stuff, and you know, it's kind of the landscape's kind of changed since then. But in 2015, January and February were a dead zone for releases, and this
just like
this
July
came out
to
round
August,
about there. Yeah. Well, it came out round about January, February, and like it just, I think because there was nothing really coming out until like I think The Witcher came out in May. I'm pretty sure. Until that release, there was nothing. So it was just Dying Light, and it just had a clear run at sales, and I think that's why it done so well. I think that's a big part of it. Just like came out at the right time. Bloodborne also came out in 2015. One of the few Souls games that I've played. I love the design of that game. I hate the gameplay of Souls games. I hate it. I mean, because it's difficult. Yes, I don't have all day to spend dying repeatedly, but also I just don't like the way it feels. I find it slow. I find it janky. I find that it's not smooth. I've never been
part of the charm, Dan. It's part of the charm.
I hate it. But yeah, I mean, that could probably be on people's list. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, that should have been Game of the Year for that year. But that's the first game that I've came across looking tonight that is on my list of the top 15 most disappointing games of the last 10 years article, which I wrote last year for Keen Gamer. We might do an episode on that at some point, so I'll probably expand on it there, but I will link that article below if you want to hear my full thoughts on why Metal Gear Solid 5 was such a disappointment for me. Although that is actually quite a significant game for me, because that was my first review I ever wrote, was for Metal Gear Solid 5, so that kind of led to where I am now.
Screaming at nobody on them.
Pretty much. What were the nominations that year, Mass? I just realised I've dived into other games without.
I can give you the nominations. So the nominations, Bloodborne was included by FromSoft.
Of course it was, because everybody, the industry just loves Bloodborne. They love FromSoft.
FromSoft, everyone loves a FromSoft game. We had Fallout 4 by Bethesda Games.
That was nominated.
That was nominated for Game of the Year.
Wow. I mean, Fallout 4 isn't a bad game, but to me, that was the game that signalled the beginning of the landslide that was Bethesda.
Yes,
that was the last game that kind of Bethesda got a pass, and after that, it's just been, God, I hope Starfield saves them. God, I hope it saves them.
Or whenever the Elder Scrolls game comes out.
Mate,
but
we'll be dead.
We'll be dead. You'll be dead, I'll be 80.
We'll be dead. I'm not that much older than you. Then again, when you were talking about nostalgia being for 2015, I was like, oh God, I'm sorry.
Exactly right, yeah. Age up a few years. So we have Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, of course, by Kojima Productions. And then, why not, they make it in somehow, Super Mario Maker. Was it the game of the year?
Because just like FromSoft, the industry loves Nintendo. Everybody just loves to just. So I'm looking at these games and I'm shocked that Rocket League wasn't nominated.
That's a bad belter.
Because again, talking about games that moved the needle, Rocket League was a small indie game that came out on PlayStation Plus originally, and just took the entire industry by storm. And it was just cars playing football. And
do you want to know something, Dan, as well? It was actually a sequel to another game.
What was it called? Rocket Powered Battle Cars.
Super Rocket Powered. Yeah.
Super Powered name. Yeah, I'd like
Super Powered Rocket Battle Cars.
Yeah, something like that. Listen, it was also made by a guy who used to write for IGN, who's now a multi-millionaire because of that game. But you know what? He took something super simple, he made it work, and he made a thought. So, do you know what? Fair enough, like, he earned it. Exactly. It's still great. It's now free to play, and it's still a solid experience. Like, Rocket League's just a great example of a basic concept just working so well. I mean, like, you look at all the AAA games that came out that year, and there is big hits in here, like Just Cause 3, Until Dawn was great. The Mad Max game is criminally underrated.
So that was my next one was going to be the Mad Max game, because I actually bought the Mad Max game over Metal Gear Solid 5.
They came out the same day.
Because they came out the same day. Because I went in and I was like, I've got a wee bit of money. I think it was because it was a summer release, right? It was
September. It was like the 1st of September.
So it was just after my birthday. I had birthday money, and I was like, right, I'll go in, and I was like, I've heard a lot of good things about Metal Gear Solid, but I've never played any of the series. I had Snake Eater briefly, and I was like, I'll buy Mad Max, and I had a great time in Mad Max.
Coming from a Kojima stan and a lifelong Metal Gear fan, you made the right choice. 100%.
Crossroads of life when I'm like...
Arkham Knight came out that year, which again...
I bought that on day one.
Sort of signaling the beginning of the end for Rocksteady.
We're not talking about Suicide Squad. We're not doing it.
Last week's episode, me and Chris went into the state of the Suicide Squad.
I'm so sad. I'm so sad.
How have they dropped it?
I don't know. They botched it. Because it was supposed to be a Superman game. It was always meant to be a Superman game, and they've had to reverse engineer it.
Sorry, I don't want to go into too much of a tangent, because I know we're trying to keep time, but it's kind of amazing in hindsight how it's kind of like how they say never meet your heroes, or like you get old enough to become the villain from Batman. It kind of feels like more and more of these games, like Dying Light was a beloved game. Dying Light 2, people hated it. We were talking about Dragon Age earlier. Look at the state of The Witcher. Look at the state of CD Projekt Red now following Cyberpunk.
I mean, the Dragon Age as well after Mass Effect Andromeda with BioWare and stuff.
Yeah, BioWare have fallen off a cliff. Rocksteady have fallen off a cliff. There's Until Dawn, like, is absolutely the best. It's just Supermassive I've ever been. The Quarry was okay, but those dark picture games, they're shite. Like, and Bethesda, like, there's another company that have just, they're a shadow of their former self. Like, it's just as amazing how these companies, do you know what, I'll say that for FromSoft, as much as I don't like their games, they're consistent, and they're consistently delivering to their fans, which you can't say about almost any of these other companies. So, yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
on
that's a
that
tangent,
very
but yeah.
bittersweet bombshell of 2015, if you have any more opinions on
I'm
that
good to
year,
move on. I'm good to
we'll
move on.
move directly on to 2016, where the winner of that year was Overwatch by Blizzard Entertainment.
Overwatch, right, regardless of Blizzard as a company and their practices, right, let's talk about the game, right?
I think I don't understand. I can get why it's Game of the Year, because I've played a lot of Overwatch. I thought it's a great FPS. It was a great entry FPS. It introduced me to the whole idea of competitive shooters with ranked and stuff like that. And to be honest, brought a lot of stuff that you probably see in like arena-based shooters and with hero abilities and stuff like that. For their characters that influenced another big FPS called Valorant by Riot Games, if you know what that is. And there's definitely clear evidences for that, and people who say otherwise are wrong. But I think Overwatch deserves its place in the Hall of Fame for games. Whether or not it was the game of the year for that year, I don't think so, in my opinion.
To me, Overwatch, I have played it. It's fun. It's whatever, right? But it's the epitome of a game made by committee. Like, Overwatch has no real soul to it, and it never, in my opinion, it never did. Like, it's just a fun, cartoony first-person shooter. There's no story. There's some kind of bland characters, but the skins are kind of, I guess, notable enough. And I just feel like a game of the year should have a soul, and I don't feel like Overwatch does. And it's not a bad game, but it's made by Activision Blizzard, so I think that says it all in terms of not having a soul.
Speaking of games that would have a lot of souls in them that were nominated that year, Doom is on the nomination list.
I
for
thought you were saying Dark Souls 3 or something.
I know. I was thinking. I wish they were, but Doom also works as well because the Doom Slayer and going through hell and stuff like that.
So Doom 100% should have been Game of the Year over Overwatch by a country mile.
Yeah, and then following it up, you have Inside by Playdead, which obviously has its sequel, Little Nightmares and stuff like that. It's a very good side. Limbo, same guys who did that. Titanfall 2 by Respawn Entertainment, and I think again my personal game of the pick for the year, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End.
So
came out that year.
Titanfall 2 was nominated for Game of the Year.
It was indeed.
I'm
it was
surprised
nominated.
at that, because to me that is like one of my personal Game of the Years for 2016. I didn't realise it was nominated. Titanfall 2 is such a great. It's gotten to me that there's not a Titanfall 3 happening, but
so close. And then Apex Legends overtook it, and that's the whole thing.
But Titanfall 2 to me is a phenomenal example of a company realizing what was good about the original game and then just growing and building it. Like, see, just the idea to add that story and the good writing and the clever gameplay, the parkour wall run and stuff, and like it was so just tight and fun and endearing. And Titanfall 2 was such a surprise hit. I never expected to like it. I picked it up in a sale because I'd heard the reviews were good, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Uncharted 4, I'm kind of okay with that not getting it, because to me Uncharted 4 is not the best Uncharted game. I think you would disagree with that. Is that your favourite?
So I think it's Uncharted 4 is not my favourite.
Right.
It's for me it's Uncharted 2, then 4,
hell yeah,
then 3, then 1.
Two. I would say 3 and 1.
Interchangeable, right? Yeah.
My man.
Yeah. Well, because 2 is the best. 2 is statistically the best, apart from the boss fight at the end. That's the only bit I have an issue with.
The thing about 4, though, to me, technically, it's amazing. Like, it still looks great. Almost, 6 years later, whatever we are, 7 years later. But they had that technology and they never capitalized on the set pieces. The whole thing of Uncharted is those amazing set pieces. The train scene in Uncharted 2, the plane scene in Uncharted 3, and then Uncharted 4 you give us a jeep chase. Like, that's a big set piece. It's like, come on, you can do better than that. Like,
I thought the puzzles were also, I think for me, Uncharted 4 like capped off the series perfectly, in my opinion. Because
this might not, I said earlier, like, I don't want to speak about the companies, let's just focus on the games. But also, to me, there's a wee bit of bitterness when I got Uncharted 4, because you realise that that's the game that Neil Druckmann pretty much elbowed Amy Hennig out of Naughty Dog, which has always stuck in my throat. Like I love the first Last of Us. I know Neil Druckmann has a lot to do with that. I'm really enjoying the show. I know he's got a lot to do with that. But the fact that Uncharted 4 isn't, to me, is a bit of an outlier with the rest of the series, and then what he done with The Last of Us 2, and the fact that I hate hypocrites, and I hate the way that he goes on about equal rights and rights for women and stuff, and then he came in and enabled a talented woman out of the company and took over, and I'm like, you're just
Amy Hennig was like those, like as a complete trilogy of games. Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 are perfectly encapsulate Nathan Drake.
Yeah.
As a character, and as you said, goes back to those set pieces and those ideas, and it's phenomenal. Right. It's like it's same as like the collection released the previous year, which obviously to TV for the when that game came out, and that was when I got a chance to replay everything through, and they still hold up, man. They're phenomenal games, and I hope they come to PC at some point as well, because I think the mods and the graphical fidelity of those games would be fantastic. But I think 4 for me, because of, again, I was young at the time, and I loved the series, and I loved the characters, and maybe through rose-tinted glasses, maybe if I played it on PC now and I went back and played it on the console, I wouldn't enjoy it as much. But I played it fairly recently. I played it during the pandemic as well, and I still really enjoyed it.
One thing that I know for a fact will hold up is the performances as well. The voice acting in any Naughty Dog game is phenomenal.
Nolan North is my favourite.
Yeah,
I love him so much. Troy Baker.
Nah, great actor. Don't know if I like him as a guy, but he is a great actor. Like,
a great actor. And the rest of the support cast as well, fantastic.
2016 was also the year of No Man's Sky, and I feel like we can't go by 2016 without talking about No Man's Sky, because that game's kind of came full circle in a way. It's talked about that list of disappointing games, 15 most disappointing games in the last 10 years. That's also on there. The hype and the money that PlayStation put behind this. Remember at the time that it was all over E3, all over the marketing, everywhere you turned. It was an indie game. It was a small team in Britain. It got so hyped up. They overpromised so much. It got to the stage where it was like, yeah, there's going to be 1 million planets that you can explore, and they're all going to have different organisms, and it's all procedurally generated. And then it's funny how 10 years later Bethesda are promising the same thing with Starfield, and it's kind of like, it's also funny how when Cyberpunk came out, the argument was, oh, look at No Man's Sky, and it's like, no Man's Sky was a game made by like 20 people. Cyberpunk was made by like it's totally different, right? Entirely different situation. To me though, right, if I'm looking at 2016 and I'm talking about the games that I just like shouting out games that I think moved the needle somewhat. Superhot came out in 2015, and Superhot is very unique. There's not much else like Superhot. Again, super basic concept. It's just a first-person shooter with a super simplistic, almost monochrome art style, and then just the really like basic kind of gimmick of the enemies only move when you move. It's so clever. It ends up becoming like a strategy game at a certain point. Like, it ends up becoming so methodical. You end up knowing the levels back to front, because it's the sort of game like Super Meat Boy or Hotline Miami, where you just die and come back, and that's kind of the point. But Superhot, to me, again, if you're talking about like surprises that kind of came and took you, like games like Hitman, we knew that was going to be great, and what else was I looking at earlier? Another one of these, Inside, I guess, and stuff like that. Like, you kind of knew. You played the previous game, you kind of knew it was going to be decent, but Superhot really took me back.
Fresh IP, isn't it?
Kind of demanded my attention, and I was like, do you know what? That is a solid title. Also, though, I do want to also shout the Ratchet and Clank remake. Again, it's a kids game, and I'm really usually opposed to like kids media, but see, when it's done right and it hits right, and I remember looking at that. Ratchet and Clank might be the best looking game up until 2016. Like, that game was stunning. Like, in terms of graphical fidelity and stuff, it was incredible. And the fact that we're doing it on the PS4 as well, like, Insomniac now are the company to me that have yet to drop the ball. Like, they're like what Rocksteady were 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like with Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine, like, they're just absolutely knocking it at the park.
I think in my opinion,
the last Ratchet and Clank games might be great too. So yeah,
I think in my opinion as well that like that'll be the new Spider-Man game will be the game that'll make me buy a PlayStation 5 probably.
Yeah. That's
when it comes at the end of the year. If I have to, if I must, I will do, because I love Insomniac, and it is they are a fantastic game studio. I think I definitely agree with that kind of like the graphical nature of that game as well, because I remember playing that like even a few years after it came out when it was like free on PlayStation Plus.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, still look fantastic, and I'm like, it took a lot of the core mechanics and just polished them off and made it better.
Again, we'll get to the sequel. We'll get to Rift Apart. Sorry, I'll say that when we get there.
with that being said. Moving on to 2017, the game of the year for that year, according to the Game Awards, was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Of course it was.
Nintendo. I like this game. Never finished it. I bought a Switch. I played it. This game is still full price. 5 years on from release? Like, it's Nintendo have the monopoly in the market, and yes, the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was a fantastic game. However, was it Game of the Year for that year? Who knows?
So for me, I've never been a Nintendo guy, but this came out and I played a wee bit of it on my mate's Switch and never really thought much of it. And then all the reviews came out and the whole industry was just on their knees bowing to Nintendo. Like, it was insane the amount of like praise this game was getting. And then we were watching our nieces, my and Courtney's nieces, one night, and they had their Switch with them. And I was like, and they were like watching a movie or something. So I was like, I'm going to the way and Switch. I'm playing this game for like a couple of hours, and I'm going to try my best to understand what other people are getting out of it. It's kind of a similar situation to The Witcher 3. I just never got it. It never grabbed me. It never hooked me. To me, it's a basic kind of open world game. I don't know. It never doesn't look good. I don't like the art style. I don't care about the story. Like Zelda, it's fantasy nonsense. Like, I don't know. It never hit with me, and I genuinely feel like it's one of the most overrated games of maybe ever, if not of the last decade. So
I think
it's
I
not my game.
With the overrated nature of it, 100%. It happens with all these kind of nostalgic franchises for a lot of people, whether that be Zelda, Mario, whatever.
Sure.
Like, people love to be nostalgic,
to give Nintendo a pass.
Nintendo money. To give Nintendo money and a pass.
To give Nintendo a pass, yeah.
No matter how many bad Pokemon games they can make.
You just make the same game every year. Like, people slag FIFA for being the same game every year. Pokemon's the same fucking game every year. Right, anyway,
but with that being said, I think there is something to be said that they love, and Nintendo are always industry darlings or whatever they are. People love their Game of Pass, and I think they were definitely, in my opinion, and again, this is a fully opinionated show, there were better games that I played and I enjoyed that came out that year.
Don't get me wrong. I respect Nintendo, and I respect that Nintendo just do what they like. That's what I like about Nintendo. They don't make decisions based on the rest of the industry. They just do shit, and it usually seems to work. I like that about Nintendo. I'll give them that.
Exactly. So my opinion, I think for that year, a few really good games that you could consider nominated. Cuphead's in there. Hellblade, Son of Sacrifice is in there for that year. You could even, you could go as far as saying stuff like, the second.
Is this the other nominations?
No, so these are not the sort. Oh, have I not even mentioned the nominations? I haven't. These are just other games that were snubbed by the awards. The other nominations for this year were Horizon Zero Dawn by Guerrilla Games, Persona 5 by P Studios, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is a weird one, by PUBG Corporation, and then Super Mario Odyssey, another Nintendo game, making it inside of the nominations.
I don't agree with any of those picks. This is the year that I'm actually quite offended by that. That sounds ridiculous. But like, this is the year that Resident Evil 7 came out, the year that Nier Automata came out, the year that
good ones. Some really good ones.
Are you taking the piss? Like, come on! Like, speaking of articles that I've written. I'm a writer, man. I can speak English.
I have wrote.
To me, 2017 might be the best year for gaming overall of the last decade. 2017 was such a strong year.
I'm going to disagree with you simply because the next year, 2018, is the best year in my opinion.
We'll get into that. But I mean, look at Injustice 2, Prey, Nier Automata, Horizon Zero Dawn, Resident Evil 7, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, Assassin's Creed Origins, which was the first good Assassin's Creed game in years. Like, there was so much that year. Uncharted Lost Legacy came out that year as well. DLC. Like, 2017 was incredible, and I'm not even talking about Zelda. Like, that's how good it was.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think there was definitely a lot of games that probably were snubbed. If I was going to say, I think Injustice 2 was probably the game of the year that year. I put a lot of time into that game. I thought it was great. Maybe even as well, like it's such a hard year to pick because there's so many good games.
I said Prey there. I didn't love Prey, to be honest. I much preferred Dishonored to Prey in terms of games from Arcane. But people, again, the industry, people love Prey. But you mentioned Wolfenstein 2 and New Colossus. That was also this year.
Yeah, that was
But
that year. Yep.
for me, my game of the year that year was Nier Automata. And again, I
Nier
guess I'm kind of discovering a pattern here as I go through. Apparently, I like games that sneak up and surprise me. Games that I'm not anticipating to be anything, because Superhot, Rocket League, Nier Automata, like it's a JRPG, like it's a Japanese open world. Like that is not my thing at all. You heard the noise I made when you mentioned Persona. Like I usually hate those kind of games. I relented and played Nier Automata because somebody told me it's got elements of Metal Gear in it with the big mech fighting scenes. My God, like Nier Automata is one of the best written, well crafted stories and the moment to moment dialogue. And even though it's obviously a JRPG, it's got that kind of the English voice acting is what it is. But even despite that, Nier Automata, like the feeling that I got playing Nier Automata is unlike a feeling I think I've got playing any other game. See, when that combination of the visuals, the music, the amount of different genres that it goes across, like Nier Automata is like 20 different games in one, and they're all incredible. Like, my God, what a game. Nier Automata 100% might be my favourite game in the last 10 years. Like, Nier Automata it's definitely up there. It's top 3.
I definitely agree with you. It's one of those games. I've still not played it, actually, to be fair. Because I just like...
That's the other thing now. See, now I've seen it in Steam for like £8 or £9. Like 100% it's worth that. If you have, it is long, so if you have like 20 hours to spare, 30 hours to spare, it is 100% worth that tenner. Like,
it makes sense. Yeah, 100%. I think with that year, it is a fantastic year, and I think I'm glad to agree from people who've told me how good Nier is, and I think that's probably one of the best ones. Moving on to I think one of the best years in gaming, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's 2018.
We'll see. I can see why you're saying that, right? But
you can see why I'm saying that, right? Because the game of the year was God of War.
Right. So out of this entire list of 2014 and 2022 game of the years, this is the only one I agree with. Like, see, when I was looking at this list, this is the only one on this list I think, do you know what? Yes.
I think, yeah, I mean, if you look at the nominations for this year, you had Assassin's Creed Odyssey, you had Celeste by Mandy Makes Games, Marvel's Spider-Man by Insomniac, Monster Hunter World by Capcom, and of course, Red Dead Redemption 2 by Rockstar Games.
So, to me, 2018, when you're saying it's the best year in gaming, the reason I disagree with that, you've got 3 heavy hitters that year. You've got Red Dead 2, Spider-Man, and God of War. That trio is like incredible. But for me, outside of that, there's not much else happening. For me personally, there's Far Cry 5, there's Fallout 76, for Christ's sake.
But you had stuff like Detroit Become Human, A Way Out, Hitman 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance, the second Tomb Raider game, or Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is one of those things. I think, in my opinion, Frostpunk, fantastic as well for like a city builder top-down thing. I think I would quite agree that 2017 definitely had more
for me, there's more 8s and 9s in 2017, whereas 2018
has 3 10 out of 10s.
Other than those 3, everything's like a 7 or below. I would maybe say Detroit could maybe squeeze an 8 out of Detroit. I'd really enjoy that. I platinumed that. I had a lot of fun playing that with Courtney. Like, I think if you've got somebody else to play that game with, it's that sort of game. Like Until Dawn, it's nice to do it sort of as a team. But yeah, I mean those 3 games. Like, I would kill somebody for, like, if you told Massimo, if you told me go out and stab somebody right now, and next year you will get Spider-Man 3, another God of War game, and another Red Dead game, that guy would be dead before you'd even finish the sentence.
Exactly right.
That is an incredible lineup.
Do you know what? Luckily this year we're going to get that, because we're getting a God of War and we're getting a Spider-Man game at the end of the year, which will be good. But I don't think anything could beat the hype from those 3 all releasing like consecutively, one after the other. Like Spider-Man was September, God of War was October, I believe.
Can't remember.
Or was it earlier there? And then fucking Red Dead was November time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Those 3 with that 3-month period, it was like, right, Christmas is sorted, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think, I definitely think, though, for games with heavy hitters for the year, and I think God of War is just a phenomenal game. I still haven't played the sequel right now because I don't have a PlayStation 5, but I'm going to get around to it, and I've avoided spoilers this far, and I hope it's as good as the first one.
I've not played it yet either, by the way. There is a review for it in Fandom Wire, but I didn't. We got one code, and I was busy with Callisto Protocol at the time. So look, reviewed it. It is a good review, but I've not played it yet. So
exactly. But I think unless you want to say anything else about it, we'll move on to 2019 then.
Let's move on. Let's do it.
Yeah, so 2019 Game of the Year. Surprise, surprise, another FromSoft game. It's Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
It's so predictable, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, to be fair, 2019, a good game, a good year for gaming sometimes. But if you're a FromSoft fan, you're loving it.
Sekiro is a good example of. There's a recent game that came out called Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Again, Luke reviewed that in the review for that Fandom Wire. I didn't play it, but that's a great example for me of watching a trailer for a game, saying, "Oh, this looks cool. I like the, I love like ninja stuff. Anything with like
feudal Japan, samurai.
I love that era." But oh god, you watch the combat and it's a Souls game. Like that immediately just kills my hype for a game. And yeah, that Sekiro is a good example. Like to me, I was borderline going to play Sekiro. I've not played it yet, but I have thought about it a few times because I've been told that if you like Tenchu back in the day, if you like old Tenchu games, this is kind of the closest thing to a modern day Tenchu. But then and I'm like, that sounds amazing to me, and I would love if FromSoft made a Tenchu game, I would 100% check that out. But this ain't that, bro. This ain't that.
No, I don't think so. I think, in my opinion, from the list of other games that were nominated that year, you had Control by Remedy Entertainment, which is a massive step up from the previous game, Quantum Break. Creators of the Alan Wake series, and also Max Payne, the original Max Payne 1 2. You had Death Stranding, which, say what you will, again, about Kojima. People did love that game, even though it was apparently a bit of a walking simulator. You had the Resident Evil 2 remake by Capcom, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate by Bandai Namco, and then you also had Outer Worlds by Obsidian Entertainment, which, people love to say is a spiritual successor to the Fallout series.
So, out of that list, I would put Outer Worlds over Sekiro, but for me, the game of the year is Resident Evil 2. That Resident Evil 2 remake.
Fantastic.
I mean, I think the only thing that I can say against it is it's a remake, so it's not technically an original idea. But see, in terms of taking an old game and just remaking it for the ground up for a new generation and absolutely nailing every single aspect of it, Resident Evil 2 is one of the best example of that, I think. I mean, Dead Space remake was pretty great. I'd say that's probably close second, but Resident Evil 2 is just absolutely just skilled everybody on how to do a great remake. The Outer Worlds was great. It was just, for me, it was a bit short. Like it's very like your kind of like open world space exploration games, but
it has that kind of contained story element to it.
It was a wee bit short for me, like unlike Fallout, which is also a bit kind of longer. But for what it was great. Death Stranding, just a mad experiment. I'll check out anything Kojima does. I still don't know if I liked that game or not, but I'm glad I played it. It's one of those ones.
It left you with something. It stays with you.
Mortal Kombat 11 was also just a solid. I feel like NetherRealm have been killing it with their between Injustice and Mortal Kombat. They've been solid recently. Another big game for that year, which I did not like, was Jedi Fallen Order, but I feel like you did, Mass.
I would say for that year, that's probably my game of the year. I played that to platinum on PlayStation 4.
Really?
Again, I don't have an issue. I don't like Souls like combat. But you give me Star Wars, and you give me lightsabers, and you give me the Force, and you give me a quite compelling story, in my opinion, set within an iconic world. And
you say all that, but to me, my biggest issue with this game was that it never felt like Star Wars, because to me, because they made the combat, they tried to kind of emulate Souls games. Obviously, it wasn't that difficult, but they emulated that style. You never felt powerful. You never felt like a space wizard wielding a laser sword, which is, say what you want about the Force Awakens games, you felt powerful. In this game, you always felt like you were on the back foot. How come 3 stormtroopers are an actual challenge? They shouldn't be.
I think canonically it makes sense because it's a guy who only had training from when he was a youngling, If you go that to extent. So it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense in my head.
If I'm playing a Star Wars game, I want to feel powerful, and I never did in this game.
Maybe you'll enjoy the next one where it looks like he's really trained up and there's a lot more.
I also found that the addition, there was like zombies in it and there was like witches in it, and I know that shit's in the expanded. I know that shit's in the expanded lore of Star Wars, but that to me it felt like almost like a fantasy game as opposed to a sci-fi game, and I don't know.
I mean, Star Wars is always space fantasy in my opinion, but it's one of those things.
I like to lightsaber customization. I'll say that.
Oh, it's good. The pod shows were the shittest part of that game. I don't know why we did. It didn't really make any sense, but I think that was probably my game of the year for that year. I think it's fantastic. A really, really good one. Other than Resident Evil 2, that's the game I put the most amount of time into, I think, that year for like platinum and stuff like that.
That was a tough platinum. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Fun one. Like God of War 2018 as well. Like I always think of those two because they came out 1 year after the other and I platinum them both. Really hard platinums, but ones that I felt like they earned how hard they were. If you know what I mean? Because the game was so good, you didn't mind the challenge. Whereas a lesser game, you'd be like, oh, sack this. Do you know what I mean?
I think I almost platinum both, but I never actually got around to actually finishing the platinum for both. I think I'm one of those people where I try and put in the effort, but again, with Resident Evil, like playing through that game multiple times on different playthroughs wasn't really, I think it was the difficulty thing for me, was always the big thing. But with that being said, unless you have anything else to say about 2019, sorry, can we move on to 2020?
Just that Control was overrated. Control.
I like Control. I think it's good, but I understand. You know what? 2020, probably the most controversial game of the year on this list. It's The Last of Us Part 2.
I mean, you see controversial on paper. It's a sequel to one. It's a sequel to one of the greatest games ever made. It's a AAA PlayStation first party release. Like, you know, it makes sense. The gameplay, and if you're again, it depends what you constitute as a game of the year. If you're just talking about solely gameplay, this is one of the best games ever made. In terms of the presentation, the way it looks, the performances, and the gameplay, it is a 10, 100%. If you are invested in the story of The Last of Us, it's a complete betrayal of the characters that you got to know, and that's what I can't accept. I do feel like I need to go back and replay it. I took it personally, right? I'm not gonna lie, I took it personally at the time.
Oh, 100%. See when they take his head and use a fucking driver on it, I'm like, this is not what I signed up for.
Oh yeah, spoilers by the way.
It's a 2-year-old game.
The thing is, right, about that game, it wasn't even the fact that they killed off Joel, fine with that, right? It was the way they chose to do it, because the Walking Dead Telltale game, another good example of a father figure and a young child, and at the end, the father figure kind of dies and to protect the child. The difference there, The Walking Dead did it so perfectly, so poetically. It was sad, it was beautiful, it was great. The Last of Us 2 felt cheap. It felt like they were pulling the rug under the audience for the sake of shock value, and that's why I hate Neil Druckmann.
you see him in if you watch the Last of Us TV show and you played the first game, a character who is very paranoid,
overly cautious,
who's overly cautious, and then immediately he helps a stranger. Sure, that's fine, but would he give his real name? I don't think he would.
And he tells maybe it's Tommy, but one of the two tells him where the camp is as well. And like even Tommy would know better as well. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope they remedy that in the show.
And again, talking about Neil Druckmann elbowing people out, Bruce Straley was the first game was co-created by the two of them, and then by the second game, Neil Druckmann had totally elbowed him out and had total creative control. Screw that guy. That's all I'm saying.
I think it was. In my opinion, though, I think as a game of the year, though, if you're looking purely technically, it was fantastic.
It's an incredible achievement. Incredible.
Other games that were nominated that year include Animal Crossing, New Horizons, Nintendo again, Doom Eternal by id Soft, fantastic. Final Fantasy VII Remake by Square Enix, Ghost of Tsushima by Sucker Punch Studios, and Hades by Super Giant Games. So from that list, I think for me, two names of games stick out massively, and that would be Ghost of Tsushima, and also Hades. I think those two were probably two of the games that I really enjoyed, and I think Ghost of Tsushima was probably the one that I thought had the best chance out of all of them overtaking Last of Us 2.
I feel like my pick is going to surprise them that actually kind of knows me, because Ghost of Tsushima, it's incredible, right? But the issue, the thing that keeps that back for being a game of the year material is the fact that it is, at the end of the day, it's an open world first party Sony game, and it kind of follows up. It is a bit formulaic. It is Assassin's Creed. It is kind of God of War. It is. You've seen it before. It's done very well. It's a great example of that template, but it does follow a template. In terms of other releases for that year, Doom Eternal was great, but to me, the first 2016 Doom really takes that for me. Cyberpunk also came out this year. Also on my list of the most disappointing games of the last 15 years, whatever the hell it's called. Spider-Man Miles Morales came out that year. Again, incredible, but built on the foundation of what had been done. It was great, but we kind of knew it was going to be great. It wasn't a surprise. Yeah. For me, the thing that I'm going to shout here, I think this is going to come as a shock. Call of Duty Warzone dropped in 2020.
Oh, and God, you know what?
Listen, right. It's an online shooter. It's a a battle royale game. It's a Call of Duty game, right? It's an Activision game, right? All that stuff's bad on paper. That's bad, right? But
we're also in the middle of a pandemic.
Let me justify myself. Like I was saying about Dying Light hitting at just the right time, Warzone. I swear, I think this is the game that made me think there's maybe some credence to that theory that Activision are part of the Illuminati, because maybe they knew COVID was coming. Because see the fact that this hit just as the world went into a pandemic, like that timing could not have been better. Yeah. They absolutely knocked it off. And you know what? It was a free-to-play game that everybody could access, and I had so much fun, and it got me through so many long days. And yes, it's a Call of Duty game, it's a battle royale, it is what it is, but it done it well, and it was fun, and I don't care. For me, my favourite game for that year was Call of Duty Warzone.
You know what?
Take my credits away as a writer, and that
take your gaming card away from you. No.
But for me, that was the game that I spent and enjoyed the most time with in 2020.
I think I'm inclined to agree with you. No, that is definitely up there for that, especially.
And that's the great thing about gaming and about opinions and stuff. See, on paper, I like 2015 how my game of the year should have been Metal Gear. For 2020, it should have been Last of Us Part 2. 100%. Like, on paper, that should have been my game of the year. Yeah. And the fact that I'm giving it to a Call of Duty title over that is insane. Exactly. But it just shows you don't know.
5 years ago, that. Oh,
yeah, like Cyberpunk was coming out that year as well. Ghost of Tsushima was incredible, to be fair. But Resident Evil 3 remake, another letdown, because, again, I feel that was a cash-in after the second one. But, yeah. Hard to live up to that.
Yeah, other than that, maybe I'd say, honourable shouts if we're going. Valorant is up there as well, which is massive FPS, especially on the PC scene. But yeah, I think honestly Warzone is up there and probably could be one of the most influential games of the past fucking 5 years, in my opinion. Just to how, you know what, timing's incredible. I think everything could have worked out for that game.
Did not
going into that, we're going at 21 as we slowly approach the present day. The game of the year for that year is It Takes Two. So
I haven't played It Takes Two, but I don't have an issue with this, because I always like when a smaller game wins. See, when it's not a big AAA game and it is a kind of smaller game, I don't mind that at all. But looking at this list, I know you're going to read the nominees, but looking at the list just kind of generally, this is, to me, probably the weakest year that we've covered on this episode.
I'll go for it. We have Deathloop by Arcane Studios of Dishonored and Prey fame. We have Metroid Dread by Mercury Steam, which is another kind of Nintendo-based game. Psychonauts 2, the long-awaited sequel done by Double Fine, which, depending on who you ask, disappointed or either kind of helped their lack of Psychonauts for the past however 10 years, however it's been. Ratchet Clank Rift Apart by Insomniac Games, again hitting it out of the park. And then Resident Evil Village by Capcom, another kind of disappointing sequel. This is what this year kind of feels like, where it was maybe the year of games that were not quite as good as the first iteration, or not quite as good as the game that came before them. Because you can say like Deathloop, I'd say Deathloop's a good game, it's fun,
but it's not Dishonored.
It's not Dishonored. Even then, it's not Prey. I also enjoy Prey, but I think it's one of those things. Metroid Dread, apparently a really solid net Metroid game, but not as good as some of the previous entries. Psychonauts 2, another one that's people waited a long time for this game from Tim Schafer's Double Fine.
Underwhelmed, right?
Underwhelmed massively. Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, probably the only game on here that maybe lived up to the first one, and by that I mean the first Insomniac Ratchet Clank, and so I've heard. Definitely was a fun game, and was one of the first games on the PS5 when it came out, which I think means that a lot of people haven't played it, because not a lot of people had PlayStation 5s that time, and since then there's been a lot more titles that have came out, in my opinion.
So for me, looking at this again, it's kind of hard to drag something out of this year, in my opinion. Because we're getting closer to the present day, we're also getting closer to my backlog of games that I've still not played 2 years later. Deathloop, I've played the first level. I've not finished. I've not played it beyond that. Hitman 3, I think I've maybe played one of the maps and I've not played the rest of that. So these are games that I've still to dive into. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, I've not played it yet. However, from being sort of in the loop with the gaming industry, apparently Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart opened a lot of doors in terms of what can be done with this generation's hardware. It was one of the first examples of a game to make use of that SSD and take players instantaneously from dimension to dimension. And now apparently they're going to use that in all sorts of other games. I think GT are looking at technology to use it for like interior environments to exterior environments. I think the new Spider-Man game as well, also by Insomniac, they're looking at like fights with kind of villains are going to be, they're not just going to be an arena, they're going to kind of go from area to area, and it's going to use the technology that was pioneered by Rift Apart. So, I mean, give it its due for that. For me, though, now this is kind of hard because for me, I'd say Resident Evil Village is my game of the year for this year, but not at the time. Resident Evil Village in 2021, I'm glad I didn't get it at the time, and I'm glad I waited. I only played Resident Evil Village at the end of last year when the Winter expansion came out. The Winter expansion gave you different modes, but it also gave you a story DLC where you play as the daughter Rose, and it also gave you the third-person mode for the main game for Resident Evil Village. And I think that addition as a package, that is an incredible package. Like, even if it's not quite as good as Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Village and its complete edition is worth picking up and checking out. So by that logic, I'm going to give it to that. But the fact that I'm having to justify it this much shows you how poor 2021 was. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Guardians of the Galaxy game, another game that's sitting on my shelf that I've not played on my backlog, but people like that.
I think if I was to give it as well, I think for me it comes down between two games. Weirdly enough, I actually recently finished Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think for me personally, that would probably be the one from that year that takes it. But the one that I played at the time, I would easily be able to say, would have to be Hitman 3, because it includes all the previous Hitman games and all the previous levels, and it is just a build upon by IO Interactive's fantastic One of Assassin's trilogy. So yeah, Hitman 3 or Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game, I think were two games that I think were arguably game of the year for me.
I need to go back and finish that game.
What, Guardians of the Galaxy or Hitman?
Yes, both.
But yes, that makes sense. I think unless we have anything about that year, I think we'll move on to the latest.
Let's go into the present day.
The present day, where we've been riding through the years. There's been some highs, been some lows.
Before we get into the meat of this, I have written a Game of the Year 2022 article on FandomWire, which I'll link below, and we also did do a 2022 recap on the PopShock podcast where we talked about the best movies, TV, and games. So a lot of this has already been covered there, but there are a few games on this list that I've played since recording, that I'll talk about. Mass, what was the game of the year for 2022? Let me guess. It's not Nintendo, so it's the other company that they just love, right? The other company that just gets a pass.
Oh, well, it's FromSoft with Elden Ring. Of course. If we want, we'll just run down the nominations for this year as well. That's A Plague Tale Requiem, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, which you have a personal hatred for, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Listen, I didn't hate Stray. I just thought it was vastly, vastly overrated.
I mean, I partially helped you come up with the title for that article.
You did. Credit is due.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know, Mass, what do you think in terms of those nominations? I mean, like we said, neither of us played God of War Ragnarok, so I don't think we can really comment on that.
But that's the thing, I played Elden Ring, and it's my first Souls game I ever played, and I played that year, and I thought I enjoyed it, but I did feel like it's massively overrated.
Right.
But within saying that, I think God of War should have won, and this is only from the statistical point of view. I'm pretty sure God of War won 9 or 7 separate awards by themselves in that conference, in that award show, and then Elden Ring goes on to win it, and I'm like, you can't say that something has the best music, the best sound, the best story, the best lead actor, and then not give them the award for the game of the year.
Yeah,
in my opinion, I think if Elden Ring had like won this award, and this award, and this award, and this award, yes, give it the Game of the Year award, and it did win a lot of awards. It did win several different awards, but in my opinion, God of War should have won it, and that's, in my opinion, that should have been the actual Game of the Year. However, my Game of the Year for this year, again, really weird thing of it being that I can't quite tell you I didn't play a lot of games this year. Like it was a weird one.
You've been busy with studying and stuff.
Yeah, I've been busy with studying, so it's kind of one of those games that kind of fell a bit by the wayside for me. I think if we're saying probably my 2022 game of the year that I enjoyed the most playing was Return to Monkey Island.
Right, interesting
Really
pick.
enjoyed it. Point
I mean,
clicking
people. I'm not a Monkey Island guy, but people that love that
Oh yeah,
game back in the day love this remake. Like I have heard it as a
the
solid,
remake's fantastic.
faithful remake. Like
it's a game I played from start to finish. It was probably one of the few games I actually finished this year, and even looking at the list, man, like there's not many. Maybe Sifu's probably up there. I thought that was a fantastic game that made use of really interesting game mechanics, but kind of fell a little bit short at the hurdle. And you have Dying Light 2, which I already mentioned, Overwatch 2, the second Call of Duty Warzone. Like, I think for this year, there's not a lot of stand-ups.
I agree that, like, I feel like as we're going along here, since 2018, we've been on a decline. I hope that 2023 brings us back up to that level again. But like we were saying about the previous few years, this year is quite scattered. But this is also the year that I was reviewing games technically, professionally. I still hate saying that; it feels weird to say that. But being paid to review games. So I have a lot of these games that I have reviewed on the website, like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Rollerdrome, Neon White is in an article. It's not a proper full review, but it's in an article. Like
Rollerdrome is a weird tenuous connection we have with the podcast, isn't it? Because one of Jared's friends was a developer of Rollerdrome.
Yep. But no nepotism here. Aside from that, again, talking about games kind of like Rocket League that just take a simple concept. To be fair, it took two simple concepts. It took Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Max Payne, and it blended them together, and it worked, and it was fun, and that's all it is. Like, it's not really much beyond that, except for the kind of cool art style. It's this kind of like cel shaded, almost like Speed Racer art style. But just taking those two basic gameplay concepts, it's really fun. It's solid.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I think
it works.
Unfortunately, as well, I think my actual game of the year, and I'm going to be a dirty man here when I say this, it was probably Marvel Snap, Dan. It was probably Marvel Snap. It won the mobile game of the year, and it's a mobile game that I put way too much time into. So it's for hours completed. Probably that FIFA 23, really, and Valorant as well. Really one of those ones. But if we're going for games that were actually released that year, would probably have to be Marvel Snap.
I mean, the Quarry started well and it ended poorly, in my opinion. Ghostwire Tokyo, I've not played it yet. Again, it's on my shelf, it's on my backlog. Horizon Forbidden West, I played half of it, but for me, the Horizon games have never clicked with me for whatever reason. They're just okay. Neon White, again, clever, simple, basic concept that works. It's Mirror's Edge. The whole anime aesthetic is incredibly off-putting to me because I hate that shit. And it is really loud and in your face, but see if you just skip all the dialogue, the gameplay is super clever and it's tight and it's fun and it's fast and it flows. But for me, my game of the year from 2022 is Sifu. Now, on that's not what I said before, by the way. On the article, my game of the year was the Callisto Protocol. To me, the Callisto Protocol never ever deserved the hatred it got. I don't see it as being that much worse than the Dead Space remake. Like, everybody's praising the Dead Space remake, everybody's slagging Callisto Protocol. For me, they're very, very similar, or very, very close. I enjoyed the shit out of them both. I gave them both 10s. But I hadn't played Sifu at the time. And I also hadn't played Sifu when I spoke on the PopShock recap of 2022. I only played Sifu last month or the month before. I mean, you take a game with that mechanic of like every time you die, you age a year, and you combine it with this like Japanese kind of old kung fu movie revenge tale. You put that nice art style with like some of this kind of basics are a bit of a harsh word, but a simplistic art style that just works. Sifu was just a hell of a fun. And it made you, again, I like games that make you feel like a badass, and Sifu made you feel like a badass.
I think for me, it just fell a little bit short of the hurdle because of how much it cost and how long you were putting into the game, kind of thing. Like it was a game that could be completed quite quickly.
That's
my only issue. Is I originally bought it at the time when it was full price.
Right.
I found out how short it was, and I was like, I'm going to refund this. later date.
What happened to me was my PS Plus expired in January, and I was to buy another year of PS Plus. It was like the year that it's ever been, and I was like, I'm not paying that. So I found a voucher on, I don't know, one of these like code websites, CD Keys or something, and it was an £84 PlayStation voucher for like 70 quid. So I was like, that's a free 14 quid. So I bought the voucher, I bought my PS Plus, and then with the leftover cash, I bought Sifu. So technically, I got it, and I say it was only 20, 25 quid, something like that. Well worth that for me, but yeah, I can see why you might think if you paid full price, it might be over.
Yeah. I thought it was a fantastic game, and it's on my list to go back and replay.
Yeah, solid.
I think honestly, coming to probably the end of this game of the year cycle, and also Atlas down. Oh no.
Atlas is fed up, man. Atlas has had enough. He's like,
He's
picked all the right games. What are you talking about? Cut off.
None of these are mine. Where are the dog team games? But honestly, I think...
Atlas, would you go stray?
Oh no. He's looking at me. He wants it done. No, I think, in my opinion, with that being said, I think we've covered all the games this year. And do you want to run down the list as to what each of our game of the year was that year to kind of cap it off, or we kind of?
Do you know what? No. Do you know what? No. Listeners can put in the effort. Go back and listen, right?
Exactly. What would you say is, out of every year? Then what's the most important and favorite game of the year from all of the years? Then we'll do that then.
For all the ones I mentioned there.
Yeah, all your ones.
Nah, I'm going to say Nier Automata. I think that's my favourite game out of any of these game of the years. It was a game that I shouldn't. It was an example of a game that I shouldn't like and absolutely fell in love with. And when that happens, when a game proves me wrong on that level, that is like, that's why I keep gaming. That's why I keep buying games, reviewing games, writing about games, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for stuff to come along and surprise me and prove me wrong. Rocket League, honourable mention, because my God, so simple, so great. But Nier Automata for me, I think tops our list. What about you?
I think God of War Ragnarok for me is definitely up there in terms of games that were fully nominated and won. I think personal favourites though, I really have to do, and you mentioned it, you said it was your game of the year for 2020, Call of Duty Warzone. It came out at such a time, it was lightning in a bottle. It's probably not it's the most important game because it got so many people through a dark time. I think it definitely deserves an honourable mention. But I think for me, beside that, if it was a normal year, I probably wouldn't have put it even close to the top. But I think definitely either God of War or possibly Spider-Man. I know I didn't really mention it at the time, but I think as well that's probably that year is perfect.
I'm glad we did this because it's kind of, for me, it's kind of painted a picture of like the decline of certain companies and the level of the games coming out across the year slowly, for me, dipping. So I'm really hoping that we hit that peak again. But it's interesting. The benefit of hindsight is an interesting thing, man. When you look back and you're like, we don't know how good we had it. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And now we are in the present of 2023. We've got lots of great games coming out this year, and hopefully this year is going to be a good year, especially for indie developers and also AAA budget titles. And with that being said, I think we're coming to the end of this episode. If you've enjoyed it, like, subscribe, comment, follow us on social medias. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I believe PopShock is the handle on all of them, or PopShock Podcast, whichever one. Whoever did the socials created it, I can't remember.
I will put the link tree below where you can find the link to all the socials, but more specifically for gaming stuff, if you're looking for that, follow me on Game Rant, Fandom Wire, and Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at DanBoy95.
He writes good articles. He does.
I post all my shit there. But yeah.
And obviously, on top of that, I assume the link tree maybe has links to previous episodes to Spotify or whatever. Or
I always link last week's episode below. So if you want to hear me and Chris talk about Suicide Squad, or you want to hear me and Mass talk about Ant-Man, I'll link that shit below as well.
Below there. With that, and also leave, as I said at the start, leave your games of the years.
Yes. Let us know
in the comments. Let us know through social media, etc., etc. Well, thank you for watching this. The inaugural episode of PopShock Picks, if that's what we're going to call it. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. But we will see you on the next page. And Dan, I'll throw over to the other new outro.
Daddy's got a brand new SmackDown.
I can't believe we changed it to that.